So I think the biggest thing is like finding that balance, because at the root of all other marriage, let's just take a few. Finances. At the root of financial situations, most times in marriage, is better communication.
Yes.
Sex. Better communication. Understanding each other's needs. Communicating each other's needs. Understanding why they have those needs. All that's communication. And then it's choice, obviously. But if you haven't got clear, you may not be certain about things, but you can sure gain clarity through communication. Welcome back to the Good Life Podcast, where we talk about the search for significance, the pursuit of purpose, and the challenges of our culture. I'm here with Daniel Foster, and we're honored that you would join us here on the Good Life Podcast. We're going to have some fun today. You're newly married, kind of, sort of, still...
Year and a half. Going strong,
Baby. This one should be fun, because the next 3 or 4 episodes, we're going to be talking about relationships, singleness, communication. We're kicking off a new series at our church. Fun. This is kind of paired with a series called Love, Sex, and Dating. And so, I don't know. Let me ask you a few fun questions on the spot.
Okay.
I didn't run anything by you.
No.
Didn't run anything by you. Your wife has no idea. I'm sure Krista will be very embarrassed by any of your answers if you don't curb it. But tell me.
She'll find out on the way to work one morning.
Let's just, what's been the hardest part of the first 18 months of marriage?
Oh my gosh, hardest part. Learning to communicate, really.
Really?
Yes. There was a time when I tested positive for COVID about a little over a year ago. And I just kind of shut down. Like we had a family gathering at my mom's house, and we all left and ended up with COVID. And so I get a phone call. I find out I'm tested positive, and within 20 minutes, I get a phone call that my mom's going to the ER. So I kind of shut down. And I'm just in the house, and I'm feeling guilt, like I brought COVID into my home, my wife, like I don't know what to do. So I'm just kind of sitting in silence for about 2-3 hours. And
that's a long time for you, man.
I know. That's how you know something's wrong. And so, I'm in my own little room, quarantined, kind of sitting in there, and my wife's like, "You can't do this." Krista said, you've got to talk to me. You've got to process. You've got to tell me what's wrong. I can't handle this. And I'm like, I don't know what to say. Communication, and that's still I remember one time we decided we're going to Sam's or something. And I was like, no, you know what? We got to the parking lot. I said, no, there's too many people here. We're not going. And I left. And about 10 minutes later, she's really quiet. I'm like, what's wrong? She's like, we made the decision to go to Sam's together. You made the decision to leave.
Oh my goodness.
You didn't even ask me about that. And so she probably forgot all about that, and that stuck with me. I've got to include her in these things. We're married now. It's 2 people. It's not just me. So
yeah. So it's funny you say that, because it's one of our first things we're going to talk about. After 23 years of marriage, the hardest part about marriage is communication. And so,
good.
Good. So you got a long road ahead of you. I think a moment of transparency here. Julie and I are in counseling together, specifically related to our temperaments. We've had 23 years of marriage. Like any other couple, there's been good, bad, and ugly. And I think the misnomer is that marriage is easy. Marriage is work. You spell marriage W-O-R-K. That's what you do. But you do it because you love the person. And we get to talk about love in the series and everything else. But at the end of the day, communication has to be so intentional. And we'll spend more time on that in a later episode. But man, we're in temperament counseling, and I am learning so much about how I'm perceived, what I can do to not be perceived that way. Julie would always tell me when I would talk to my kids a certain way. And I was like, what are you talking about? And she was like, when you said this, his face told me he felt that. And I'm like, you got all that from that conversation? And then come to find out, the reason she knew was because when I said those things, she felt that way. If I had the conversation with her. So I'm just saying our staff's doing temperament counseling this year. Yep. I'm excited for you guys in that and in your marriage. But after 23 years, the hardest part is still communication.
Do you have any stories? Any communication stories?
Ooh,
I'll put you on the spot.
Man, where do I start? Let me just give you kind of how it goes down at our house. Rather than giving you stories, because there's probably 1,000 stories, but I'll say something, and she'll say, "Well, you said this." I'm like, I didn't say that. That's not what I said. So I might use a word like, it bothered me when, and then she would say like, you said you were mad. I'm like, I didn't say I was mad. I said it bothered me. But I guess for whatever reason, the manner in which it was like communicated, it came off as I was mad.
Yeah.
And I heard somebody tell me, somebody who we'll have on the podcast in the coming months, Stephen Webb, said this to our staff. He said, it's not just what you say in a room, it's how you say it. So when you're relaying something somebody said, you actually have to relay it with the same mannerisms, same posture, same everything. I think sometimes I don't realize my posture and some of those things. So she's a processor, and I'm like, let's get it over with. Let's get it done with. So I think the biggest thing is like finding that balance, because at the root of all other marriage, let's just take a few. Finances. At the root of financial situations, most times in marriage, is better communication.
Yes.
Sex. Better communication. Understanding each other's needs. Communicating each other's needs. Understanding why they have those needs. All that's communication. And then it's a choice, obviously. But if you haven't got clear, you may not be certain about things, but you can sure gain clarity through communication. So
I'm just thinking, in my household, I will vent or I'll say something to Krista, and she's like, "You didn't say it like that, did you?" Like, I'm like, I got so frustrated. Like, you did. No, I didn't say it like that. I was more grace-filled, but I'm just venting to you.
Yeah.
But she's like that safety net for me. She's like, whoa.
Yeah, I'll go and say, I got to have a meeting with somebody, and I'll just ramble off. You can't say it that way. Well, I would. And she said, well, you just did.
I get mad because, like, with AT&T, like, our Wi-Fi, I'm going to call customer service and say, no, you're not going to say it like that.
Right.
That is just I'm like, okay, fine.
Yep.
Thank you.
Well, I think so. As we dig into, we're going to look at Ephesians chapter number 4 today, and the whole premise behind today's conversation, or just the backdrop, is like, what are some roadblocks to healthy marriages? And you can insert healthy relationships, parenting, kids relationships, but I'm going to talk specifically about marriage, because for most people, that's an end goal. Not everybody. Some people find singleness to be a calling, and that's okay as well. But most people that we talk to say, who am I going to get married? How am I going to get married? How can I have a better marriage? And all that. So Ephesians 4, we'll just I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'm just going to give you 5 thoughts from Ephesians 4. We started with 3 episodes where we do the top 3 things. Now we're down to, we did 4, now we're doing 5. So
just keep counting.
Let me just give you 5 relational roadblocks from Ephesians chapter 4. Number 1, we've already said it, poor communication. Poor communication. We'll deal with this one later, but here's what Ephesians chapter 4 verse 25 says. Therefore, each of you must put off falsehood and speak truthfully to your neighbor, for we are all members of one body. So at the end of the day, we must learn to communicate accurately, appropriately, truthfully. Again, we'll hit that in a later episode. In verse 29, he goes on to say it this way. He says, do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to what? Their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. So at the end of the day, every word you use is a word you choose. And every tone you use is a tone you choose. And so I think if it's not building the other person up, you're going to find very clearly that the poor communication will take root. And then all of a sudden, this, it's like, I felt this way for a long time. I'll give you another example in our home, and we'll spend more time talking about this in a few weeks. But I will say, hey, this bothered me when you did this. And she'll say, well, let me tell you what's been bothering me for 3 weeks. And I'm like, for 3 weeks? Now, she don't say it that bluntly, but that's what I'm like, why didn't you tell me back then? Our producer's having a coughing meltdown over here, so it's okay. Go ahead and cough it out, Josh. And so at the end of the day, she'll say like, well, you did it. And I'm like, if you'd give me an example when it happens, and I can do better. But understand, when you give me that example, and this is the same thing that I've had to do in the way I speak to her, is like, you're building me up. You're making me better. You're helping me improve. But waiting 3 weeks doesn't help me with anything. Also, if I bring something to you and I bring it with a wrong tone, it doesn't build you up. And so that unwholesome talk is every word you choose. I would say the time you choose. The time you use is the word, the time you choose. And so all of that plays into good communication.
Yes, I had a situation the other night where I'm like, this is not a good time to bring this up to Krista. We had a lot going on with Hadley, and she was sick with something. But I was like, I'm like, this is not. We need to check dishes before we take them out of the dishwasher, make sure they're clean before you put them up. And I'm like, I want to remind her, and because it might have been my fault. I don't even know. But I was like, this is not the time to start this conversation.
Yeah,
timing is so important.
I'll come back to this in our episode on communication. Something Julie and I have started doing that's been amazing in our communication. So here's the second one: 5 relational roadblocks. Unidentified feelings. unidentified feelings. Verse 26, from right here, Paul writes to the church in Ephesus, in your anger, feeling, emotion, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you're still angry. And do not give the devil a foothold. Here's the thing. Identified and communicated feelings. So again, you got to identify them, then you got to communicate them. So he says, don't let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth. He says, speak truthfully to one another. And then verse 26, in your anger, do not sin. I used to say this to Julie all the time. She hates it. I would say, feelings aren't right or wrong. Mm-hmm. Listen to me. Feelings are not right or wrong. There's a time and a place that you should say that or shouldn't say that, though. That you see, like, so. You
learned that the hard way.
Yeah, huh? Paul says to the church at Ephesus, in your feelings, do not sin. What I'm of the opinion, you can put in there, in your frustration, in your anger, in your sadness, in your insert whatever you want there, it still plays out the same way. In your feeling, do not sin. Now, he said anger. I don't want to change the scriptures, but you get the point here. And do not let the sun go down while you're still angry. Process this. And so we'll talk about some of that in communication. I think ladies specifically, what tends to happen with most, and temperament therapy will help with this as well. What tends to happen with a lot of ladies is they feel something, they think they can deal with it. Over the course of 2, 3, 4 weeks, it builds. And then they don't even know 3 weeks later why they're frustrated because they didn't identify the original thing. For men, I think it plays, and probably the ladies are listening like, you have no idea what you're talking about. I'm just giving you some examples from real life. Men, I think what we do is we say, I'm frustrated, or I'm hurt, but we're really mad. You got to identify the real feeling. So you can say, it just hurts me when. This is something I've learned from me. I'll say, I'm hurt, but I'm right on the tink, just right on that tip of like mad as rip.
Yeah.
So like trying to really identify what that is will help me actually communicate in a better way. And so there's so much here that there's a word wheel, feeler wheel, whatever it is, where you can identify. Mm-hmm. So you're trying to get to the actual feeling that you feel. Am I frustrated with you or am I mad? Am I hurt with you or am I stressed and angry because of something? You see what, getting to the real, so identifying those feelings. All right. We can spend a whole day on that. Here's the third one. I do want to spend some time here because there's a lot of people who are living in relationships that are being destroyed by this, okay? This is the third one. Third relational roadblock is intentional manipulation. Narcissism. Control freaks. Many times this is men. It can be women in other ways. But verse 28, anyone who has been stealing must steal no longer, but must work, doing something useful with their own hands, that they may have something to share with those in need. So this verse 28 has this underlying idea of me, my value, take, control. And he said, no, you must do something that benefits the other person. And so, it's strange that he would throw this in here. It's like, communicate well, speak good, don't be angry, and quit stealing. It's like,
which one of these don't belong?
Yeah, where did that come from? But there's something here in verse 28 that's like, somebody who's going to steal something. I stole a chapstick as a kid. I mean, there's this secret, I need to control, I need to kind of manipulate everything so I can get away.
Yeah.
You see this undermining thing or underlying thing is I'm controlling the pieces here. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to get caught here. I'm going to control the narrative here. And so I want to give you some four of the manipulate. I see this all the time. Men are big time manipulators and control freaks sometimes when it comes to their wife. Ladies can do this in other ways, manipulate, especially when it comes to physical intimacy and some of those things. But let me just give you manipulators' greatest weapons. Number one, threats. If you do this, then I'm just going to. If you do this, then I'm going to tell. If you do this, then I'm going to take this. If you do this, then we're not going to. You better not do that because you know what will happen if.
Gosh.
Listen to me, ladies. If your husband is saying that to you, you need to talk to somebody. If you don't do what I want you to do, there are going to be consequences. So the question is, what are the consequences? Here's what I would say. I'm not advocating for you to put yourself in harm's way as a female. But if he is physically abusive to you we need to get you help and get you out and get you in a situation.
Absolutely.
If you say, I don't know what would happen if I said no or did that or whatever, then that's a good sign that you need to talk to someone and need to get help. If you're like, there's some ladies, just call his bluff. Just call his bluff. And see what, now, don't put yourself in harm's way, but you should know how far you should have signs and red flags. But I would just say, come talk to somebody, get in touch with somebody. We can help you navigate that. But threats. Here's the other one. Guilt. You know what? You remember that time you did that? I can't trust you to do. I'm controlling you. I'm going to control the narrative here. You know what? You shouldn't have done that because when you did that, it hurt me so bad I'll never be able to. Mm-hmm. Or because you did this, or because you. And a lot of times
keeping a list of wrongs.
Yep, you did this, therefore, and so you guilt them into controlling them. Yep. The third one is this: harsh words. You'll never be anything. You're just like your mom. You're just like your dad. Ladies can be harsh in this one a lot. Ladies can also be the guilt tripper. Don't see threats quite as often with ladies, but guilt and harsh words can be ladies. You're fat. You don't look like you used to. You're ugly. You're going to be just like, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like harsh word. It's not just, maybe it doesn't appear harsh, but it is. It's cutting. And so if this is you, again.
And couples know, like, the right button to push to make it, like, they can make it very passive.
Yeah, so, like, there have been times, so I don't want to go too much into, like, my marriage situation here because there's other contributing factors. My parents, her parents, extended family, and all that kind of stuff. But there have been times I've said, hey, and she's been able to say to me, hey, you say you don't want to be like this. Mm-hmm. I'm telling you, I'm seeing this in you. That's different than saying, stop acting like so-and-so. I mean, that's that's a different way of saying it.
It's the way you say it.
And it's the intention. If every word you use is a word you choose, you choose how you say that. But manipulators don't say it that way.
That's so good.
Manipulators do it in a controlling way. Mm-hmm. So, and here's the fourth one, isolation. Hear me. Narcissists, manipulators will do everything they can to isolate their victims. Every single time. If I can push other people around you away to control you, I will. You can have friends as long as they don't interfere with what I want. You can have family as long as they don't interfere with what I want. You can do this, but the moment I don't like it, I gotta push them away, pull you close. I've got to have you where I can control the narrative in our relationship. Okay? Jesus is going to the cross. I think I used this example in our last episode. The Bible says Peter pulled him aside. He isolated him. Because and he said, this is wild to me. I joke about, I've never been called Satan before. He says, I can't let you go to the cross. I'm never going to let you. And Jesus says, get behind me, Satan. Well, Satan is the father of all lies, the accuser of the brethren. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. He only seeks to steal, kill, and destroy. He's the ultimate manipulator. The enemy is. In the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve, where the good life was lost, ultimate manipulator. Yeah. He manipulates Eve. So here's the part. He says, get behind me, Satan. What did Peter do? He pulled Jesus aside. He isolated. Because here's what I've learned. A manipulator's greatest weapon is isolation. Because if I can't be seen or heard saying it, nobody can hold me accountable to it.
Goodness, that's good.
Imagine Peter standing up. Jesus has lived his life spent 3 years with the disciples going, I'm going to die, I'm going to die, I'm going to die. I came to give my life. The whole purpose I came, and Peter goes, in front of everybody, I can't let you do that. Everybody's going to be like, Peter, what are you doing? You're an idiot.
Yeah.
But he didn't. He pulled him aside.
Man, I never thought about that.
If Jesus was if Peter tried to control Jesus, you don't think men and women try to control each other today? And so at the end of the day, Peter was... I think there's two things. I can't clinically diagnose Peter. I think he was a narcissist. I think he was a control freak. I think Jesus said you're being like the ultimate manipulator, Satan. That's clear. Wow. And so, but the sad part about that is Peter had a lot of insecurities too. Most of this is rooted in insecurity. So I'm a dominant choleric red. I can have some controlling tendencies, but when you're healthy, God can use that in a powerful way to lead, not be controlling. if you're unhealthy, the dark side comes out, and now you attempt to control and exert power over something. This is what world dictators are, you know? And so at the end of the day,
they're not yellows.
that's right. They're not the sanguines. So we talk cholerics or reds, the more leadership driven and some of those things, and just naturally wired to do certain things. Doesn't make them better leaders. It's just their natural wiring. And so at the end of the day, though, healthy leaders, healthy dominant can really lead change and do things, but not they control. So it's rooted in insecurity. Remember what Peter did when Jesus was about to go to the cross? Jesus is standing before, he's actually on trial. And Peter's outside looking in, warming his hands by a fire, denying that he even knows Jesus. The same one who said, I'll never let you die on the cross, I can't let you do this, is now denying him out of his own insecurity. That's what manipulators do. When the crowds came, I don't know. Jesus, between me and you, I got your back. I'm in control. Ooh. And so manipulators' greatest weapons, threats, guilt, harsh words, and I would say isolation is the end goal. So hear me. It's very intentional. It's very intentional. I'm not saying we don't all manipulate sometimes unintentionally, but this is a greater level of it. Yeah. So if you're in a relationship like that, please send us an email. You can send it to, you can comment here on the podcast or let us know. Even our church, relevantchurch.cc, there's a care link there. You can send it there. We'll help you in that. Our counseling center will get in touch with you. We can help you navigate that. If you're a part of our church in that, you know how to get in touch with us. But this is a dangerous place. So a couple things. How do you know if you're being manipulated? You often feel guilty and find it hard to say no. Here's the second one. You compromise your values to please others. That's just a couple ways. All right. Here's the fourth relational roadblock. Constant criticism. Constant criticism. Let's be honest. We all get married with unrealistic expectations. And then all of a sudden, we don't live up to our part of the deal. They don't live up to their part of the deal. It's like, what happened? And so now we become critical of each other. It's real easy to become critical. Listen to what it says in verse 29 again. He says this, do not let any unwholesome talk, again, words you choose, come out of your mouths, but only what is useful for building others up. So here's what I said about constant criticism, and maybe you can comment here. Praise often reveals what you value most, and criticism often reveals your deepest insecurities. So
you criticize them to keep the spotlight off of you.
Or I'm wrestling with my own insecurities. It makes me feel better to criticize you.
Yeah.
So if I struggle with appearance, the way I look, I'm going to be critical a lot of times of other people's Instagram posts and the way they look and various things. If I struggle with, my marriage, I'm going to be critical of how I see other people interact. Naturally going to notice other people's flaws and point them out based on my insecurities. Flip the script. Praise often reveals what you value the most. So if in a marriage, all you're praising is how beautiful your wife is, what do you like beyond her beauty?
Right.
If all you're praising is he's a handyman, look, he can fix anything. He can fix anything. Well, okay, but I want to be valued more than my ability to fix things.
Yeah.
So that praise and criticism conversation goes a long way when it comes to how you value one another. So any thoughts? You're 18 months in. You're taking notes, aren't you?
I'm taking all the notes. I'm going to go back and listen to this about 3 more times and get my notebook.
All right, we'll end with this one. Here's the fifth one. An unforgiving spirit. An unforgiving spirit. Verse 31 and 32. I'll read this. Get rid of bitterness, rage, and anger. Rage and anger, brawling and slander, along with any other form of malice. Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other, just as in Christ God forgave you. He says, get rid of it. And so here's all I'll say about forgiveness. We don't have time to go into a lot of this. This is actually coming off the heels of a forgiveness conversation on a Sunday in our church. But the unforgiving spirit, all it does is put you in a prison. You're building your own prison. Yep. We think, I'm not going to forgive them, I'm going to hurt them. No. You're hurting yourself. And now you might hurt them because of your unforgiving spirit. You might constantly criticize. There's all those things. But at the end of the day, there's so many marriages and relationships. Lean in for a second. There's some hurt. There's a lot of hurt. I realized 23 years into marriage, I did things when I was 3 years into marriage that I didn't realize I hurt my wife. I didn't realize Julie was hurt by that. I didn't realize 3 weeks ago I hurt her, or a month ago I hurt, so there's hurt. All this kind of works together. All I'm simply saying is you're never going to have healthy relationships in any part of your life if you harbor unforgiveness. Yeah. You're just not. Your kids, your wife, your husband, your parents, your friends. I mean, our family is pretty close-knit, extended family. Not because we've always did everything perfect, because we've learned to forgive each other.
Yeah.
And in the moment family starts being is the moment we start holding grudges and drawing lines in the sand, and then we're like, we're not going to do this, and you're not, and it becomes and I'm telling you, in your marriage, it will destroy you. So, couple things to restore hope. If you're dealing with this, let's go back and redefine the relationship and maybe even rekindle the relationship. What started it? I don't have time to go into all that, but just thinking about what drew you to that person? What started that friendship? Find that. Not the passion, but like what brought the smile to your face? What friendship? Redefine it. Get back to the basics of that. The second one would be this. Set healthy boundaries. And then the third one would be evaluate your motives. In all of these, I would say to you, poor communication, unidentified feelings, constant criticism, and unforgiving spirit, you can make change in that immediately.
Yeah.
The third one, though, intentional manipulation. If you're in a relationship with a narcissist or someone who's a control freak or somebody who's manipulating, you're going to need help with that. You're going to need help with that. So any closing thoughts, anything stand out or you want to say?
Like I said, I'm just taking notes. I ain't got much to add. This is so valuable to me personally. So I'm hoping that those that are listening are also taking value from this and maybe taking notes and applying it. Not just saying, yeah, that's good, but actually acting on it and applying it.
Yeah, I think we're in this series called Love, Sex, and Dating kicking off soon here. I hope that people will take notes and really dig in, because this content, again, if you're, I'll say it every single time we're on the air here, like and share, send this to someone you know. Probably don't send it to your spouse and say, you need to listen. That's not a good idea. But leverage it as a conversation piece with your spouse.
Let's listen to this together.
Yeah. Hey, I'd love to, man, I found this. I'd love to listen to it together. And God's challenging me in this. I'd be curious how he's challenging you. If you want more information on temperament therapy, we can provide that for you as well. But yeah, like, share, get the word out, leave us a review, and let's just help people in their walk with Jesus and their relationships with each other. You're going to say something, aren't you?
Yeah, now that you said that, don't just send it to your spouse. Like 2 weeks ago, Krista sent me a podcast on marriage tips or whatever. So now I'm wondering if she's trying to send me a message.
Yeah, you just say, Krista, what did you specifically want me to hear from this? I'm just wondering.
Yeah, no. What did you mean by that?
But I think it goes back to so I'm going to share some thoughts about communication, I think 2 episodes from now. We're going to come back to communication again after this is brewed for a while. And I'm going to give you some tips that I think will help.
I'll be ready for it.
Yeah. So, hey, thanks for tuning in. Again, like, share, get the word out. We'll see you next time on the Good Life Podcast.